Hey there, believers. Hopefully the audio is better this week than it has been. Uh, we got a great show for you this week. Today, I'm bringing on Patrick, and he's going to talk about his lifetime of struggles and what he's had to deal with in the physical and spiritual world. I'm super excited about this episode. I don't want to reveal too much. He sent me a good email to explain things, and I'm just going to let him do the explaining. Um, If you're watching on YouTube, I am working on the lighting. This is a new, supposedly really good camera. It's supposed to be shooting in 4K, but right now it looks pixelated on my laptop. So I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. Everything is changing, everything is new. Um, I'm not great with tech, and I'm not quick with catching on to the latest and greatest programs and all that stuff. I mean, it's so we will figure it out. It don't matter how grainy the video may or might not be. What matters is the content, right? It's always good content because you guys make it good. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just uh, a conduit, basically. You guys come on here and it's you telling your story, it's you telling your experiences, it's your testimonies. I'm just blessed to be the person to listen to it and to put it out there. So that's what we'll continue to do. All right. If you would like to support the show, it's easy. You can get a hold of me at buymeacoffee.com/the bump podcast. Any amount, high, low, it don't matter. It's all greatly appreciated. And as you know, there's no paywalls or anything. So everything I put out is free. Absolutely no paywalls of any sort. If I put out bonus episodes, it's not for members only, it's for everybody. That's just the way I felt led to do it right now. Um, Down the road, we might go back to a membership like we had before in the past. Um, we might go to Patreon like we did before. I don't know. But as of now, um, I'm just trusting that it'll just stay wide open. And thank you to everybody that has been sending in the support. Um, that's how we get new stuff. New mic, new laptop, new camera. Um, it's just you guys have been a blessing, and I thank you for that. If you would like to be on the show and share your experience, it can be anything: unexplained, monsters, paranormal, conspiracy theory, um, you know, testimony, miracle, whatever you want to talk about. The weirder, the better. Okay, holler at me. The best way to get a hold of me is at gmail.com, the bump podcast at gmail.com, or you can call the bump phone at 304-812-0553 and leave a voicemail or a text, and I will try to get back to it. Those are the most reliable ways, probably Gmail. You can also get a hold of me through any social media, but you know, the most reliable, most frequently checked would probably be the Gmail account. So let's go that route if you want to. Okay, I'll quit babbling. Let's go ahead and bring Patrick on the show. All right, Patrick, I already did a little pre-intro before we started recording. So everybody knows you're on here to share your experiences. I didn't go into a whole lot of detail or anything, man. So the floor is yours, brother. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. Appreciate it. I'm new listener by way of Tony Merkel, so
Yeah.
enjoying it and stuff. And your last podcast was just kind of just hit a nerve for me. So I figured I'd
Amen.
reach out to you and I kind of got a little mission myself. So hitting podcasts that'll hear me,
Amen. Let's hear it.
So yeah, I guess I could just kind of start from the beginning. I didn't grow up at all like in any kind of with any kind of spirituality or anything like that. Or like I didn't grow up in the church. I never read a Bible like any of my life. I mean, I think I might have been in a church for like, something secular, that some kind of event or something that like, but other than that, no church, nothing like that. Um, and I think I've always had like kind of a you know just seeds planted over time. I do have some like childhood experiences that I kind of want to start after that and then kind of rewind to it.
Yeah.
um and I'll just start kind of when I became aware of demonic entities and God and Christ, and then I can go back if we have some time to
Yeah.
kind of talk about that stuff. So I grew up in a large metropolitan area in California in the Bay Area, and I pretty normal childhood. My family, I parents stayed married, raised me. Parents do their best, and they did their best, and uh, I didn't really have any reason to kind of stray, and now I kind of see where a lot of that came from, and one, not being raised with any kind of like spiritual morality, I think, is part of it, but also just probably spiritual influences and physical influences kind of guided me off the path. So right around like I actually had this bike accident when I was 8 years old, and I was like hospitalized and stuff. I hit my head real hard, and my mom told me I had never really been the same after that. But um, but really, like, a few years later in kind of junior high, I started becoming like more of a troublemaker and stuff like that. Wanted to hang out with the cool kids, and I was always the youngest, and so I think I had something to prove. So I kind of made it my identity to be kind of the the most kind of badass kid as much as I could be. Kind of,
Right.
I think I was like kind of impressing the older kids in my grade and stuff, and the grades above me, and really quickly got into, well, like, at the time it was like skateboarding and jackass was like that was like what was cool and stuff like that. But and of course, being where I'm from, gangster rap's huge and all that stuff,
Right.
and there's a big scene there for that. Really quickly, by the 12, 13, I was messing around with alcohol and weed and stuff like that. And then by high school, I was selling weed, and slowly kind of went to selling, like, party drugs, all the ecstasy and all that kind of stuff, and mushrooms and things like that. And I kind of found out there that I had been really good at kind of networking with people, and able to kind of be almost like a um, liaison for some of these bigger drug dealers into other markets that they maybe wouldn't have necessarily access to. So I was selling mostly weed and stuff like that. I did cocaine probably. It was like 13, 14 for the first time. I mean, it's one of those things. And I'm from Oakland originally, and it's one of those things where it's just like, doesn't matter where you're from. Well, I was from a nicer neighborhood. Like, you end up kind of just, if you if you're that type of person, you get mixed up in kind of the hood rat stuff pretty easily,
Yeah.
and so I did, and I found that I had made a lot of connections throughout high school and all that stuff, and um, ended up going into college for a little bit. I was always really good at school. I went to like one of the top engineering universities um, in the country at the time, and but I didn't have my heart in it. I wanted to go down there to skateboard, party, sell dope,
Right.
and just have a fun time. And um, and so my attitude wasn't the best. I ended up dropping out, and prior to dropping out, I had a big arrest, and did some jail time for that. And then I kind of got into, I had broken my foot skateboarding, and so that kind of, the drug testing of the arrest and the opiates they put me on after I broke my foot kind of got me into that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so and I had done some hard drugs before, but it wasn't ever like something that I got carried away with. I was more focused on the money aspect of it. But yeah, ended up dropping out of school, 4.5 years into this engineering program. I know, it sounds like, oh, 4.5 years, you should be done by then, but the program down there, it's more of like a 5, 6 year program. It's a real difficult
Right.
program. ended up dropping out and kind of at that point I dedicated myself to doing criminal activity. And so, yeah, I kind of just slowly spiraled into, selling a lot more hard drugs and, cocaine and opioids and stuff like that. And I ended up moving into an apartment back in Oakland. I left the college town I was in, and I was just kind of doing my thing out of there. And that was kind of where, it was like about 2011 I started really kind of getting high on my own supply more than I should have, and
Yeah.
things kind of started spiraling. And I had multiple times gotten clean from opioids and stuff, and then I would go back because I do too many stimulants and I'd want to even myself out with the downers. And I ended up just getting really heavy into heroin, and the cocaine turned into crack cocaine. And
Mm.
that was like those were like my drugs of choice. And I it was really, the heroin was kind of a thing where like I needed it so I didn't get sick, because there's a real bad physical withdrawal from it, and the crack was the high I was chasing. So it was like one was out of necessity, the other was out of like, for some reason I had this need to do it. And coming kind of towards that point where I was transitioning from, regular cocaine to crack cocaine use, I was like noticing a lot of these really paranoid thoughts and stuff like that were kind of popping up. And like, I would, be in my room using or whatever, smoking a cigarette, whatever, and then I would just like, oh, the cops are coming, whatever, and I'd be like, I'd stand at my door looking out the peephole, for like hours, thinking that I was hearing them walking up the stairs, and I get psyched out, and it was really strange. But that's pretty typical on, drugs and stimulants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I eventually I got evicted from that place, and my parents allowed me to move back into their house. And that I was kind of in a that was kind of my rock bottom. I was up there. I mean, there my mom keeps her house really nice and clean, and my room was like this microcosm of drug abuse and the state that my spirit um, and my emotions and mental health were in. And my room was just a mess, just stuff everywhere. I mean, I'd have like needles sticking out of stuff, and just, I mean, I was using it. I was at that point, I was past you know past the making money, having a good time thing, and it was more just me like spending as much time alone as I possibly could, except to go get drugs, eat food when I needed to eat food, and do whatever I had to do to make money, or do what, that kind of thing. So, but I still had this really strong skill of being able to network with people and talk to people. And my whole drug career, I mean, they would front me these large amounts of drugs, knowing they were going to get their money back. And so I had all the like basically free drugs at my fingertips all the time. And so anyway, I would just be using. It was routine for me to just pass out on the, face on the desk, wake up, somewhere in the middle of the day or something like that. And one day I noticed there were some people on the other side of the fence in the yard of my parents' house, and they were having a party. And I started kind of getting curious, and I would go outside, and I'd go and I'd like kind of see what they were up to. I couldn't actually see it, but I could hear them kind of having a party. It was like they're having a little bonfire over there, and or like a campfire. And I all of a sudden started kind of talking to them, and they would start talking back to me. And it was like, it kind of started as like, oh yeah, yeah, like we're cool, like hey, you're funny, like let's be friends. And like over time, it started turning into this thing like, hey, why don't you come to the party, right? And this was over a matter of days and stuff, right? And so it would turn into things where they would pretend to be my friend, and then they would do something and try to humiliate me and clown on me and joke at me and stuff like that. They would like lead me or all around the neighborhood trying to find how to get into this party. And then I would end up getting led right back to my house. And then
Wow.
they'd be like, why would we let some loser like you into our party? And then they'd all laugh at me. And there's this huge party of people that was laughing at me and stuff. And then I would, go back in my room, and then one day I realized, and by the way, a lot of this is not quite chronological, because this was, many, many
Yeah.
years ago. But, and, I didn't write it down at the time, although I wish I did. And I'm currently kind of working that out, putting it on paper. But then one day it would be if someone I knew from school or something like that would come to my window and talk to me, and they'd have like a regular intelligent conversation with me, and I couldn't really see them, but I could hear them through the blinds of the window and stuff, and they'd be talking to me. And then I was in a band at one point, and they would come and they would talk to me, and they would talk smack and ridicule me and all these things, and they would get me to do all these things. And then at one point it was, they would convince me that it was like they were, federal agents, and they were essentially, it was like being schizophrenic. This is what schizophrenic patients experience. And that
Right.
they made me think that, they tapped my room and my phone line and my vehicle and all these things, and they were bugging things. And then at one point they kind of, it was almost like they gave me powers, like they could make me know what someone was going to say, or they could tell me when someone was going to move and block the way of a clerk, and so I could steal something. And so it got to this thing, like, point where, and they kind of convinced me at one point like I was Jesus, and that was a really weird thing. And then yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. And every day I would wake up in the morning, or whenever I would wake up, I would use and I would use and I would use, and the voices, there would be more and more voices coming, and like it was almost like I was a magnet every time I took a hit. And um so they would end up, coming and talking to me and tormenting me, and sometimes they would pose as people from my past or other people. At one point they convinced me I was psychic, and that they were just people in the area, in the neighborhood, and I was communicating with them. And then they would I would get higher and higher, and then the voices would get out of control, and they would convince me that I was uh, too powerful when I used drugs, and I was imposing myself on their personal lives and stuff by getting in their heads and stuff like that, and it would
Right.
make me suffer, and would cause these negative emotions and negative energy that they just fed on and they loved. And I over time, I actually ended up getting kicked out of their house, my parents' house, and I was living on the street, and they were tormenting me there even. And I eventually was able to kind of discern that these were kind of like uh not people, but some kind of demon or something. And I intuitively called them imps. Like it was like they were like these mischievous little trolls that were just messing with me.
Yes.
And um sometimes I would like call their bluff and stuff like that. And then all of us, and they always were like kind of on like on almost on like a script. Like there was this, they had an MO. And then if I like kind of called their bluff, they'd call like a demon that had a like an actual name, and it would be more like a sergeant, I would call them, or like an overlord or something of this group of demons, and they would come and start like really kind of playing on a specific vice of mine, or some kind of something that I was insecure about or something. Like for example, one of the demon's names was Hell in a Handbasket, and so I'd start hearing that name, and she would get closer and closer and closer, and she would start talking and tormenting me. I can't remember which one was which. There was one called Hotsy Totsy, and she was like it was like she was like, she would torment you sexually, like just like put weird thoughts in your head, or do all kinds of weird stuff. So there's different stuff like that, and different ones that would play on your rage. There was even a guy that was he during the psychic part where I thought I was psychic, he would speak, and it sounded like he was really far away, and he would go, "Yeah, no, I'm actually helping you. These are the bad ones, and I'm the good one,
Oh,
and this is my name, but you can't hear me that well because I'm farther away." And he'd be like, "Oh, my name's Damon Wayans," and I'd be like, "Damon Wayans," and he's like, "No, Dwayne Wayne," and he'd change his name to get me to be confused. So he was like a demon of confusion almost.
yes.
And so there were all these different kind of little, imps that I called them, and they had these different kind of personalities, and some of them had names, and some were like more low level. I think they were all pretty low level, but they were kind of just messing with me. So over time, I ended up when I was living in my car, I got to a point where I was just like, I can't live like this anymore. I think I was on the verge of going into like full blown opiate heroin withdrawal, and I kind of just cried out. I was like, I can't do this. And I ended up calling my parents, and they agreed to help me go into a rehabilitation program. I ended up going in there. I did get clean from heroin in there, but
Mhm.
I only lasted like 10 days because I was being a troublemaker and got kicked out. But that was the upside of it. But when I left, I was still chasing the crack high. And so I was living back at their house again, and it was not as bad because there was one negative aspect taken out of the picture, but there was still a really insidious drug that was kind of playing a part in it all. And so anyway, the voices kind of continued, and eventually I got to this point where every single night I would break a crack pipe, going, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit. I'm never doing this again. Because at that point, I didn't want to get high. It was just, I was just in this loop. It was like it was
Yeah.
just routine, and it was, and I believe it was spiritual. I don't know necessarily believe in addiction the way a lot of people believe in it, but I it was an everyday thing. Then I go buy a new one in the morning, and I start it up again, and I ended up one day I remember I like just cried out. I was out having a cigarette, and I was hearing all these voices just coming at me, and I just like cried out to God, and it was like this weird cross of light just came out of nowhere, and whitewashed everything around me, in my eyes, in my vision, in my hearing. It was like this weird, just powerful presence, and and it kind of like went away, and that was kind of the beginning of the end of all that,
Amen.
and it was really powerful, but it was also not one of these things that happens overnight. So it was like the next day I got right back at it,
Right.
and but I believe, God kind of plants these little seeds that are slow sometimes for people. Some people just turn around immediately, but that's not my story. So I ended up one night, it was I broke the pipe, and I was having this argument with these voices in my head. They're like, "This is who you are. You can never be anything but this. You're a loser. That's all you are." And I probably shouldn't have done this. I didn't fully make like a deal or a bet or anything like that. But I was like, I bet you I could quit for a week. And so that was the last crack pipe I ever broke. I stopped for a week, and then I stopped forever.
Thank God.
And
That's
it was just a
awesome.
slow um, spiral upwards from there. Climb up the hill. It was difficult, but it was really it was really just everything's been positive since that point in my life. Obviously we have ups and downs. So um at that time, that was about, I want to say, 2014, 2015. Um I was getting really into I had been so disappointed in my life of dependency and being so insufficient, um, that I got really into wanting to be self-sufficient. I got really into kind of gun culture. I'd always liked guns and stuff like that. And I kind of got really political. I started really informing myself, reading tons of books. I had a desire when I was a kid to be in the military. And so I was like, that's what I'm going to do. This is my chance to do what I wanted to do since I was a kid.
Right.
And so I ended up, I was learning all this stuff, and I really wanted to go in the Coast Guard, because some people say that's not the military, but I mean technically it is. But I wanted that just because I was into the law enforcement rescue kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so that was my first choice. And I come to find out, it's actually the hardest one to get into, because it's small and people like
Small.
to retire from it, and it's Homeland Security. So I ended up, the application process was 100% online. I was totally honest, which is a mistake when you're going in the military at 25 years old. Uh, so basically, they found out about all these, quote unquote, air quote, medical problems. Like I had broken my foot skateboarding. Like I told you, I got injured and got on the opiates and stuff. And I think they essentially convinced me to give them every time I ever went to a doctor. And so I had a stack of papers, 3 inches thick, that I gave to them, and it was like all these red flags for them.
Yep.
And that took 9 months to get disqualified, and I didn't talk to one recruiter until I got disqualified. It was all online.
Oh my God.
And then they told me, hey, if you go to the Army, you can get cleared, you can do your contract with the Army, and then you can come back to us. And I was like, okay, deal. So I go to the Army, I go to the Marine Corps recruiters, and Marine Corps immediate was just like, we're not going to take your paper. That's way too much paperwork for us. The Army was like, and this was, at a time they weren't taking a ton of people. So the Army told me, they're like, if you just come to us first, we would have told you what to say and what not to say, and you'd be in the Army right now. And they wanted to contract me for infantry going into Ranger selection, because I was like busting PT. Like I got uh in the whole self-sufficiency thing, I started really working out a lot, running a lot. I was crushing all the standards and everything. And also, I had an engineering background, so I was crushing all their tests and stuff like that. And so they
Mhm.
wanted me, but it came down to administrative guy, bureaucratic guy off in
Yep.
some other state somewhere, saw my paper, your liability, boom. So that took another 2 years. And during that time, I started working again. I was working first at a golf course that a buddy of mine got the job for me. And then I ended up, just because of my ability to kind of communicate with people. One of the customers there, he ran a composite aerospace composite manufacturing company. And he liked me a lot. He's like, come work for us. So I ended up working for this aerospace company, and it was a really great job. And I'm eternally grateful for them for giving me that job. And during that time, I was kind of waiting to hear from recruiters and stuff like that. And I was trying to kind of fill that time, like, what else can I learn? What can I get good at? I ended up going through a wilderness survival program that was a year-long program. I was up in NorCal, and this is down in SoCal. Every single weekend, I'd be driving down there, doing courses, flying to Alaska, living
Wow.
out in the land, all that kind of stuff, and became an instructor. Um, and then during that time, I got really into like wilderness medicine, and so one of my mentors in that program convinced me to become an EMT. And so I went to wilderness EMT course, became an EMT, with a wilderness upgrade, and in a month-long program. So it's a really fast program, and through that kind of clicked up with a lot of the, like, there's a good amount of like kind of military and special ops guys and wildland firefighters and stuff like that. And the wildland guys were like, and actually the military guys too, like, dude, like the wildlands, like they look past a lot of like criminal history stuff and all these different things. You can still get that service that you want to do in the military. You can still, this is 4 years into trying to get in the military, that um you can get that adrenaline rush kind of stuff. You can be with like a brotherhood of guys and all that stuff. It's like, that sounds pretty cool. I think I might look into that. So, after going through Coast Guard, Army, Marine Corps, I was looking at Air Force Reserve or Air National Guard. They had a PJ program that I really wanted to do, but that was even harder to get into than a lot of the other ones. Uh, so I was just like, it's just not, it wasn't meant to be, and I look at it now as God was protecting me from,
Yeah.
because I work with a lot of vets now, and they're like, they know what they were fighting for now, a lot of them, and they see kind of what really transpired. And so I think God was protecting me from a lot of that.
Amen.
But most of them are great guys. It's like they still provided a service and did what they thought was right at the time. So I went to wildland firefighting for a few years, and really enjoyed that. And I kind of knew deep down, within, pretty quickly, I wanted to start my own company, and I wanted to leave California because it's California and no one wants to live there that is in any kind of right state of mind.
Right.
And so I ended up, I got a place here in, where I live now in Montana, Northwest Montana, and started my company here. So I do wilderness survival training and wilderness medicine training,
Love it.
and I work on the rural ambulance out here, possibly maybe going on to other stuff here in the community. But about couple of years into wildland firefighting, I started dating this girl, and and we really hit it off, and we were having some really deep conversations, and I told her some of the stories. And at the time, I hadn't thought about it for 7, 8 years. I hadn't thought about what had happened in my past life. It was like I was a completely different person. Like
Yeah.
I didn't even really remember a lot of it. And even when I first got clean, I decided I was going to write a book. And it was more of a narrative than anything. And I just kind of dropped it. I was like, no one wants to hear my, BS story. A lot of people have gone through stuff, I was like, it's time to get real. I'm going to go into the military and do this. But anyway, so I started talking to her. Everything was kind of way on the back burner somewhere, back in my mind somewhere. And I told her about these experiences, and she goes, have you heard of this guy, Jerry Marzinsky? Have you heard of him? I think
I
we
hadn't.
talked a little bit. So she got me into him, and I started watching his podcasts and stuff. And um, it was basically, he's a psychotherapist, and he worked for over 35 years in schizophrenic wards
Hmm.
in state hospitals. And he saw the way that they were treating these people, how little they knew about the disorder, how they were treating them with these really dangerous antipsychotic drugs,
Yeah.
um, and how they weren't getting better. And he started kind of on the down low without his superiors knowing, otherwise he would have lost his license. He started asking what the voices were saying and actually entertaining, which is a big no-no in the medical field. Like, we're not supposed to really be entertaining that even on an ambulance. We don't, when we do a psych call, we don't,
Right.
you know, pry into, like, enable them is how they look at it. But he started asking them questions, and he was able to discern through talking to these patients and through talking and through, researching different cultures and stuff, that these were entities outside of these patients. And he even had, I mean, he has stories almost identical to mine. I actually know him now. I've done some interviews on YouTube with him. But he was finding out these were entities outside of them. They were always following the same patterns. It was never positive, it was always negative. They could tell people things they couldn't possibly know. Like, for me, they could tell me where money was hidden or a cigarette was or something like that. He had a patient that, it was so dramatic. They told, this one patient lived in San Diego, California. He had two voices that told him where a marijuana grow was in Oregon. He drove to Oregon. The grow was there. He stole the weed, and then they told him where to sell it. He made money, and then uh, the voices really liked fishing, so they went and fished on the Columbia River and did cocaine and got, hookers for like months after doing this. Like, this is real stuff.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so he's like, this can't be just a chemical imbalance. And he finds out, like, well, there is no chemical that's out of balance that they can tell you what it is, and they can't even tell you what the number is for that, for what the balance is.
Hmm.
So how can they possibly make these claims? You know, so I got started really deep diving into this stuff, and kind of just came right to the forefront. I was like, man, this is really crazy. And just really started watching a lot of his videos, and then things started kind of happening again for me once I think they realized I was kind of onto them,
Yep.
onto these entities. But it was different. It wasn't the voices this time. It was a different type of entity, I believe. Oh, I did forget to mention, when I was hearing the voices, I would also see these green-eyed shadow demon kind of things that would surround my parents' house and kind of approach me when I would pay attention to them and stuff. And Jerry talks about that too, and he talks about how, they especially meth addicts will typically see these same entities. Even together they'll see the same one. And so he, I got really into this. I just moved back into the bunkhouse at where I was doing wildland fire at our station. And so this house is it's on it's in the Modoc County, California, which is like very controversial kind of Native American history there. There's the Modoc tribe and the Army cavalry fought there for a long time. Lots of bloodshed, lots of
Hmm.
artifacts out there, and as well as this house that we are staying at used to be the refuge supervisor's house. And so it was built back in like the 20s or 30s or something like that. So this thing's old. Not to mention, there's a fountain on the land made out of native like mortar and pestles.
Oh, wow.
And so there's these crazy artifacts and stuff. So we would regularly have, and most of the time, I mean, we're working out in the forest, sometimes 35, 40 hour shifts, just depends on how bad the fire season is, which Northern California is as bad as it gets, really. So we just have weird stuff happen while we were there. Like, for example, I would have they'd give us these, AC units you put in your window, and it was like May, so it hadn't gotten real hot yet, and we're out in high desert and stuff, so it gets like, in the hundreds, and it's dry and hot and gnarly. And this thing wasn't even plugged in, it wasn't even in the window, and I get woken up and the thing's on. It's just like it just kicked on.
Hmm.
I had a weird thing happen with you know what a sous vide is for like
No.
doing meat. It's like this thing way to cook meat where you seal it in like a vacuum bag, and then it goes in this water bath that goes, it's like circulates through this electric machine and keeps it exactly at the temperature you want it cooked, so that it's like medium rare or however you want it all the way through, and then you just sear it real quick so it's like the perfect steak, right?
What?
And I had that going because I was going to do a tri-tip for the station. It was like, I think it was 4th of July or something. So we were, going to do a barbecue. And and so I have this thing going, and it's a 16-hour cook. So I'm sleeping, and my Bluetooth, it's a Bluetooth machine, and the Bluetooth goes off and says, like, hey, your water level's low. And I go in there, and it's like, sure enough, it's like that high. And this is a closed system. It doesn't pull water from anywhere or drain it anywhere. It just goes through the same thing through the whole system, like all night through for the cook. So weird little things like that. And then you'd be sitting in the living room like watching TV on your days off, and there'd just be like a weird shadow figure up in the corner or something like that. Or like we'd
Wow.
go, our laundry room was in the basement, and you'd go down those stairs and you just feel like something was there. It was really strange. Although I hadn't fully kind of like accepted the like I knew there were spirits, I knew there were scary stuff out there, but I hadn't like fully accepted it was real. Like I was like, oh, maybe I'm just creeped out because I'm alone out in the desert in this old house. But that feeling like when you go up, you like step on one of the stairs on your staircase and you just feel something right there, and
Oh
it's
yeah, man.
so it was like that kind of thing. Fast forward through that fire season. I had got my house that February. I moved up to Montana with that girl in November, and then things really started escalating. So I had a let me get a sip of water. I'm drying up here a little
Yeah,
quick.
you're good. You're good.
So I had a she came up here with me, and we moved in, and it was November, so winter was just about to really kick in up here. And um one night I wake up and I cannot move. I'm like on my back in the bed, and I cannot move. I'm fully awake, and the bed's like it's like someone grabbed the headboard and they're shaking the headboard. And I was just like, it was like super scary. I couldn't move. I was able to like turn my head to the right and look at her, and she's like got her eyes closed, and she's sitting on or laying on her back, and she's breathing like really heavily and really fast, like really like it was just really strange. And I'm able to get these words out of my mouth. I'll call her Rita. I always call her Rita. It's not a real name, but I go, hey Rita, do you feel that? And she turns her head to me and opens her eyes, and they were just black.
Oh
And she
no.
goes, in this like really weird voice, just goes, I'm not Rita, in this like demonic voice. And I was just like, I tried to just force words out of my, I was just like, just F off, right? And so
Yeah.
like screamed at her, pulled myself out of it, and I like wake up. Sorry if I swore on the show. I don't know
Oh,
if
you're
that's all
good.
right.
You're good.
Okay. Um, and I just like wake up, and then she like kind of wakes, snaps out of it, and I'm just like heavy breathing. And I had heard through Jerry Marzinsky that he had told his patients to recite the Psalm 23 when they were getting these attacks. And by the way, I don't want to like just brush over Jerry Marzinsky, but he can tell his stories better than I can. I highly suggest your listeners and you go check him out because he's got some stories and a lot of information that I kind of just blew over. But um, I recite that psalm, but there's something trying to put me back to sleep, so I can't finish it. And it was like this weird tug of war in my body and in my spirit that was like trying to keep me awake. Something was like pulling me up by the scruff and like making my mouth move, while something else was like fighting to make me stop. And I finally got it out, and just like my energy was just like I was just buzzing, but I was drained. It was like this weird feeling. And she's like, what happened? I was like, did you not like see what happened like just now? And she's like, no. But she's like, and I have a big old bed. She goes, you're like 200 degrees right now. Like there's just heat coming off of your body right now. And it's like, she was like, that's really weird. And so I told her what happened. It was really strange,
Yeah.
really scary.
Yeah.
And anyway, we ended up breaking up. She left, she moved, and I started having some other strange things. Like there was I mean, I have so many of these experiences. It's hard to even go through them all, but these are some of the big ones. And I woke up and I was paralyzed again, and I had this shadow woman, like I could tell it was the figure of a female, and she was trying to like mount me and have sex with me. Like I could feel, her trying to like, arouse me and like straddle me and stuff. And when I woke up and realized there was an actual figure on top of me, I was able to physically like throw it off of me
Oh
and
no.
like wake up, pull myself out of it, kind of wake up out of it, and recite that psalm. A lot of really strange things like that happening. I had uh I really started researching it then because it was really scary and stressful for me when these things were happening. And over time I started kind of going through, I did some deliverances with some deliverance ministries and stuff, and things would get better. Of course, after every time I would do deliverance or I'd do some kind of spiritual warfare, it would get worse for a time because they would kind of I learned they retaliate when you do these things. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and so I would get incidents, and then they just kind of started getting less and less over time, but they would almost, and especially like when I would start really getting serious about being obedient and stuff, and doing my Bible study, and stop doing like these habits from, like a lot of people talk about, when they stop masturbating, they get these like weird succubus attacks at night. And I would get that too, all these
Right.
things. And, or when they stop doing, this thing, another vice would come up. So I started getting these weird things where I'd get like angry, right? Like I remember there was an incident where I got like I would start getting really angry. It was like the spirit of anger would come on me, and I remember I got this, and something happened, and I was really wrathful at this person that did this thing to me. I don't want to get into it, but I started having these weird dreams about like I had a dream where I was at my parents' house, and we turned their basement into a little like music jam studio, and I was down there for some reason, and there was this little skunk monster running up and down the wall, or like up and down the side of the, or the on the floor, but along the wall, and I was like trying to stay away from it so I wouldn't get sprayed by the skunk and all these different things, and I couldn't get out of the room because it's like one way in, one way out. And then after that incident happened where I was getting really mad, I was in my kitchen, and I was making lunch or breakfast or something like that, and this incident was on my mind. Like I was mad at this girl about something, and I saw that little skunk monster just
What?
materialize in my kitchen, run for like 2 feet, and then disappear.
Man.
And I wasn't like corner of my eye either. I was looking right at it,
Yeah.
and I started looking into it. I was like, there's got to be some kind of demon that looks like a skunk or something like that. So I look into it, and I couldn't really find anything exact, but the closest thing I could come up with was Ashma, which is related to Asmodeus, and there's a few other ones. I have it all written down somewhere, but it's a demon of like wrath and insatiability and all these things. It just happened to be the one thing that I could come up with on the internet.
Yeah.
And so a lot of just random stuff like that, and the things just started getting less and less as I became kind of more proficient in speaking the name of Jesus and praying and self deliverance and going through deliverances and all these things, and becoming more spiritual and really dedicating more of my life to these kinds of things. And so they started more toying with me in my dreams rather than full on, holding me down in
Right.
my
Yeah.
waking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would feel these dreams turning into, I could feel like when they turn from a dream to a demonization. And so it was like a switches flick. So like an example is I was in a dream, and I was sitting in my vehicle, or I was actually sitting in the back seat of a vehicle, and I'm looking at my phone, and there's these little grasshoppers, like crickets, in the screen, and then they kind of raise up, and now they're on the screen. And I pick it up, and for some reason I start trying to break it in half, but then the cricket starts bending my fingers in half, and I can feel it physically in my dream trying to
Wow.
bend my fingers back and stuff like that. And I've had things in my dreams like try to like tug on my ankles, or like sometimes I feel things tapping on my back just to mess with me.
Yep.
Like, and you can feel it physically. It's like these really weird physical things, and you know that it's not a normal dream because you're just aware and awake. And then I started having these dreams again. Chronology is a little out of order here, but I had a dream where I was um, I had been listening to a lot of the confessionals by way of another podcaster, by way of another podcaster. Um, and a lot of at the time, a lot of the episodes were about people that like astral projected and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And I kind of always just intuitively knew that that's bad news. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
man.
want to be astrally projecting nowhere, no how. And yeah, I had these dreams where it was a series of dreams. It was dead of winter here, and it was like -20 outside, and so you're feeding the fireplace constantly, the wood stoves, and I wake up. Actually, prior to this, I did forget this. There was a weird demonic shadow demon thing that appeared just for like a split second at the foot of my bed. And he was a very large, imposing kind of, it was like I could almost make out like a hooded maroon, like almost pea coat material wool hood, and
Wow.
then just black inside of it. And then a few days later, there was a weird entity that was above me. It was like a black, it was almost like it was almost like what was it, the thing from the Fantastic Four. It was like a rock guy, but it
Yeah.
was black, and it was like a he had like a weird, really thin, bright white outline
Mm.
just appear like above me in my bed. And then I had this series of dreams where I was uh, rowing a boat with my friend Josh, and we're going down this. It was a canal, and I knew it was a canal somehow, but it was like vast, like an ocean. It was like this weird. I don't know what the metaphor is for that in my dream,
Right,
but it was
man.
a weird thing. We're rowing, and we're following this other rowboat, and we dock, and they're docked, and they've already gone up into this building that's at the end of the dock, and the building is like it's almost like the upside down where it's like black and white,
Yep.
and eerie, and there's no one else there, but it was like an apartment complex, and like there's all these doors with numbers, and we're looking for something. And I don't know what it was, but we finally run into these two guys, and we start fighting, like having a fisticuffs, and then we like finally like, wait, what are we doing? We're all looking for the same thing here. And then I wake up in real life, and it's like freezing, and so I go and I feed the fire, and then I go back up into the bed and I fall back asleep, and um, I'm back in the same building.
Wow. That's
And
that's so rare. It's so weird.
yeah, exactly. Like a lot of people will like have these dreams and try to go back to the same place, but I wasn't even trying to do that. It was just I just end up there, and I'm with this. He's like a tall dude with a like skinny dude with a ponytail, and then there's like a pretty kind of chunky girl, and we're all talking, and we're like, what are we all doing here? Like, where are you guys from? And it turns out they were from the same place, like not right in the same town, but they're same part of Montana. Like one lived out in Columbia Falls, which is like it's close, but I don't really ever think about it or anything. And I was new to the area at the time, so it wasn't like I was like
Right.
super familiar with like which town is what. And he was from another place. And we're like, okay, we gotta meet, right? Like we gotta figure out a time and a place to meet. And so we're like, okay, why don't we get coffee? Go get coffee like on Saturday or something. Okay, where do you live? She goes Columbia Falls, and then this guy forget what he said, and then we kind of decide we're gonna get coffee, and then she starts getting sucked out of the dream and starts talking like gibberish, like can we? I think she said like, can we Netflix and chill or something like that. She said something like that, and then she was like gone, and I was like, all right, dude, she's out. Like we need to figure this out right now so that we can meet. And then I started getting pulled out of the dream, and I wake up again, and I go feed the fire, and then I come back, and it's like morning, but I'm like I need to snooze a little bit, so I go back to sleep, and now I'm in a lecture hall, and it's like these slides, and I don't remember what all of them were, but it ended up, I just remember it was something about like these are the ways that God draws you to him. And it was like each slide was like a different thing.
Wow.
And I remember it stopped on a specific slide, but I at that time I was like kind of, not really disciplined about writing down all of my experiences yet. I do now, but I forgot what that one was. But I just something the Holy Spirit is the only thing I can explain, was telling me like this dream is real. Those dreams were like, actually at the time I hadn't realized this. I take that back. So I had I didn't remember what it was, but when I was on a podcast with my friend Pat, um, we kind of were just talking it out, and it came to me like, whoa, these first two dreams were a demonic force trying to get me to invest in astral projection, invest in the dream world, invest in giving myself up for something. And the third dream was from God saying, these are how I draw you, not this,
Amen.
if
Man,
that
that's
makes any
good.
sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I gathered from that, even though I didn't remember. So God was going like, don't worry, you don't have to remember exactly what the dream was. This is my message for you.
Yeah.
And so all kinds of stuff like that. Things have just gotten better and better. Every once in a while, I mean, I honestly have just tons of experiences written down, and weird puzzle pieces I put together, just listening to different other people's accounts and all these things. But I guess the biggest, like, I mean, I could keep going if you want, but the things I really like, I want to get out there, and I've decided to start writing the book again, and it's
Yeah,
actually
please
going to have
do.
a message rather than narrative this time. But I, um, I will say before I go on to my message, the when I was a child, I had seeds planted of Christ in my life. I was never, like I said, raised in any of that stuff, but I have a vision from that has stuck with me from when I was a child. I don't know if it was a dream. I don't know if it was some kind of TV show that just like was somehow made to be a message for me or something. I can't remember what it is, but I am standing on a hillside, and there's a path going kind of traversing the hill, but also going downhill. And I'm looking at two demons
Mm.
that are holding a baby, and the baby is me, and I'm watching myself from this hillside being carried away outside of my body. And I think something tells me now that um that was like a symbol of me. I had to go to get taken away by the dark side to finally see uh, who is really in control and who I really need to serve. Because I think God puts a lot of us through um, really dark things
Yeah.
to show us who He is. Because I don't think I would have fully came to where I am now if I hadn't seen demons and hadn't seen all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I wouldn't. Everything's planned. I mean, and
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, but and then I remember I've had a few incidents where there are like I had when I was homeless, I was always like more of a hustler and stuff, but I was kind of in this desperate spot where I was like, I got to panhandle. I don't want to panhandle. I don't know how to panhandle, And I tried to do it and I couldn't do it. And this gentleman comes up to me, and I'm in West Oakland. I'm in like in the hood, and he comes up to me, and I was like, hey man, you got $5 so I could get some food. At the time I wanted $5 so I could get some drugs. But he's like, yo, let me tell you about I'm on my way to church. Can I tell you about Jesus and stuff? And he started talking to me about Jesus. And then he at the end he was like, hey man, I'm gonna give you $5 right now, but you can't buy drugs with it.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. And he gave me five bucks, and I got breakfast. I couldn't do it. I just
Amen.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then I had another instance with a lady who's really pretty. I was at a bar. This was before all of that. And I'm not sure if she was an angel or she was like some other kind of higher level demon or what. It was very hard to tell. But I think because she was like, I was attracted to her, physically. I think a lot of it that was like enticing me, and she was possibly demonic, but she was telling me a lot of stuff about my life, and maybe almost in a new agey way, and maybe she was just an agent, human agent. I don't know what she was, but I
Right.
recalled that later on in life, and then I had when I was in the midst of my drug abuse, I was trying to get into my parents' house to get some of my musical instruments so I could sell them and stuff like that. And they were like freaked out, man. They were just like they were just heartbroken by me and where what I'd become and stuff. And they called the police on me. And so OPD came up to my house, and it was this cop. He was a tall, blonde haired, like cop, like really tall dude. And he comes up and he's like, "Do you have any weapons?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got a knife in my pocket." He's like, "Okay." He takes the knife from me, talks to me a little bit, and he's like, what's your plan for the night, and talked it out with me. And he's like, "Okay, your parents are scared, you got to go." So he let me go that night, and I was being like threatening, and I was being totally crazy. A few months after that, when I was living in my car, I ran out of gas. My I go to my trunk because I had a gas can, and I was going to go walk to the gas station. I'm in North Oakland at this point, and this cop car pulls up, and this is a completely different part, like opposite side of town. Same cop gets out,
What?
and this is Oakland. Like, this isn't a small city. It's not the biggest city in the world, but it's not a small city. And he's like, how you been? He remembered who I was. I mean, this is like 4 or 5 months later,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, how you been?" And I'm like, "I'm all right, I guess. I ran out of gas." He's like, "You need help or anything like that?" And it was like he was just assigned to me or something. It was really strange. And actually, he was like one of the reasons where I kind of became really pro police,
Yeah.
because I was like, I was always like an F the police kind of guy, but I had this like compassion from this guy. And I don't know if he was an angel. I don't know if he was some kind of agent from God, a human agent assigned to me or something, but there's something there where there's no reason I should have had these two encounters unless he was like hired to follow me, but I don't see why that would. I mean, I'm not out there, I'm not one of the big fish in that
Right.
city doing all the crime and stuff like that. I'm just a dope head. Um, so yeah, a lot of these seeds were planted. For some reason, I've always had a fear of God, even though, and I've had this weird fight where I've wanted to like something tells me I need to like buy a Bible and like become a Christian, but I was so heavily indoctrinated in the Bay Area with, religion bad, communism good, this and that, all these things. I'm not so political anymore. I'm more on the spiritual side of things, but came to realize a little bit later that um that was the right way to go. For some reason though, I had this like fight, this internal war of like, you need to go to a church. Like even before I went like rock bottom, it was like, and even in like high school and junior high, for some reason I felt this need to seek God, but it was like my worldly frame of reference and not wanting to be ostracized by the people around me was like,
Yeah.
no, you're not doing that. So it really did take all of that to bring me to where I am now. And it really was like a matter of just like the Lord planting these seeds just slowly in my life throughout my life that I didn't even take inventory of at the time. But when the time was right, I was able to recall every single one of those things and trace it back to being a child and trace it back to God. So it may sound a little weird because I can't remember every single thing that happened off the top of my head. Like I said, I got pages of stuff that I've written down, but I don't think that works well for a podcast. But but yeah, so I'm writing a book now. It's going to be more of a message kind of thing, and I've talked about some of these demons and stuff. There's also angels. There were even when I was hearing the voices, I had angels or some kind of good entities. I call them angels, that were helping me throughout that time. That were and they don't talk in verbally. They can talk. God can talk, but the difference that you can notice is um, demons are imposing. They impose their voice on you. They impose their fear on you. They impose these things on you, and they feed off the negative emotion that you give them. Angels and demons will give you their name if you ask for it because they self glorify.
Yeah.
Angels won't they may give you their name if they're a high level demon. I didn't have that experience. Usually they communicate to you in feelings and symbols, which like that cross that I saw, or like some of these feelings of there being that tension of a tug of war between the demonic and the angelic. Or like when I was having that argument of like, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit the crack, and the demons were telling me I couldn't. I had this encouraging feeling, and it was kind of a voice, but it wasn't verbal like the demons were. That was like, no, 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 you got this. You can do this. Like stop, stop, stop. You
Yeah.
got this. We're rooting for you, kind of thing. And so there's this. They are there. So I don't want people to be discouraged. Like there's just demons out there, and they're freaky and they're scary, but there are things that you can call upon and they want you to call upon them. That's the difference. Like the demons will start talking to you as soon as they have an opening. The angels will wait for you to ask them, to ask God for their assistance. um so I had a point I was going to make, but yeah, it's my message basically for this book is um you everyone, man, I keep thinking of stuff. Sorry, I'm like
No, no,
way
no,
out of
you're
order.
good, bro. Keep going.
One
Go
of the
ahead, go ahead.
things that Jerry talks about, and that really resonates with me, and was experiencing this before all the drugs without realizing it, is everybody experiences demonic influence of some kind.
Yes.
I can, uh, the probably the most common is intrusive thoughts. So these intrusive thoughts, you ever have that thought where you're driving down the road and like you're like, oh, just drive off in the ditch?
Yeah.
Or like some people are like, oh yeah, just stab somebody. Like that you never do it.
Right.
You're like, oh, that's cringy, and you toss that thought out the window, but it comes in your head, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why? If we're going to believe in evolution, which I don't believe, by the way, but if we're going to believe in evolution and survival of the fittest, what possible benefit to our species does a self-destructive thought like that have? It's not you saying it doesn't further your species. It's destructive. Suicidal thoughts are destructive. Depressive thoughts are destructive. You So everyone gets these intrusive thoughts, but to a certain degree. And schizophrenic patients, or like myself when I was under the drug abuse and I had opened these doors, they just have it turned up. The dials turned up, the veils are lowered, so they get them more. But everyone gets these things.
Yeah.
And for me, it started as thoughts, and I thought it was my own voice. But once I kind of got into the drugs and I was opening these doors, they decided, hey, we can come out as who we really are now and start and reveal ourselves as outside entities, because this guy he's all in,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, it was they were more humiliating um, spirits that were kind of getting me to make my own demise for myself and do humiliating things and kill myself with drugs and stuff. But some of these schizophrenic patients and drug addicts and stuff, they will get spirits that are so malevolent that they will actually tell them to kill themselves or do things that are actually destructive, like murdering people or whatever. Like an example that Jerry uses, which actually kind of resonates with my experience, is he had a patient who the demons were like, hey, if you gouge your eye out, we'll stop. And so he did it, gouged his eye out, and then the demon said, "Are you an idiot? You thought we were gonna stop just because you gouged your eyes?" And then they humiliate him because of that. So there's all these different things, and what I experienced was a hierarchy. So I told you about the ones that
Yeah.
didn't have a name, that were more on a script, and then I told you about when they would need like a reinforcement. They'd bring in their higher ups.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that have different abilities, like there's the shadow demons, and there's the succubi, the Lilith type of thing. So I believe it goes even higher. Like I haven't even experienced the half of it. I'm sure there are people who have those like straight up exorcist type of demons and stuff like that. I mean, there's historical accounts of these things. I haven't experienced it, but I know there's a hierarchy, and I know that they work. And people talk about all kinds of different spirits, like monitoring spirits and different stuff like that. And I believe they have a network.
I do
And
too. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think they work on our society as a whole. I think, like I said, everyone gets these intrusive thoughts. I think a lot of these politicians and stuff, I mean, there's definitely some of them that worship demons, and they're in on it and stuff. But I think there are some that don't even know, and they are so addicted to their vices that the demons can just speak in their ear and get them to do things, whether it be money or anything like that. Um,
Absolutely.
and one of the big things that we have to realize is uh, the big science, pharmaceutical companies, big medicine, all these things have done a really good job of convincing us over the past 100 years that these are chemical imbalances. And these are like these entities are something that our great grandparents were aware of. Like
Yeah.
spirituality is not
Amen.
is the lack of spirituality is not recent, or it is recent. You know, a few generations ago, people knew about this stuff. It was
Yeah.
common, and you know that what's it? I think it's The Usual Suspects that and Kevin Spacey goes, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing you he doesn't exist. I
Yeah.
mean, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
They've used these scientists and these politicians and society to shun anyone that believes in anything spiritual. That anything could be caused by an entity outside of themselves. And so it's really just that phrase is exactly, I think, what is happening. I think that they've convinced us it's psychological, and praise the Lord, I see more and more people waking up every day to
Amen.
and being open, and receptive to, like, when I talk to them about stuff. I was talking to, well, I don't want to like name names or anything, but I was talking to a kind of higher up guy in my area in the town about it, and he was like, yeah, he's in law enforcement. Okay, he's like, yeah, I see this stuff all the time. I totally believe exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um,
100%, man.
and so, yeah, I mean, I guess my initial message for this book, maybe there's going to be more, but I'm not really an evangelist. I don't think, at least I'm not yet. I'm not. I do work in a deliverance ministry. The Centurion, a bunch of those people have been on Tony's show and stuff like that, and they're awesome. And we do deliverances, and I try to work with them as much as I can. But my message, and sorry to keep straying away from that,
Love
but
it. Go ahead.
the basically, you cannot fight a spiritual war, or you can't fight any war that you don't even know that it's going on. So if people can finally go, hey, I may not be like that guy where I'm hearing voices or I'm seeing demons, or I'm getting held down in my sleep, and succubus is trying to get all over me or whatever. Maybe just I'm just having these depression thoughts or anxiety thoughts that are, following these patterns, and that is something I want to touch on too. They follow like these patterns. That's what Jerry found, that they always followed these 23 patterns. Everything that these entities would tell these schizophrenic patients. So if
Really?
you can notice, like, hey, this depressive thought, this anxious thought comes on at this certain time of the day, or when I do this, there's a reason for that. It's because it's a pattern. Like, I started noticing I was having these thoughts of self-doubt, right when I wake up in the morning, trying to set the theme for the day, being I can't do what I need to do. My business is going to fail, and I'm not good at this or this and that. And then once I started realizing what it was, it started going away. And so, yeah, I guess the big message is you can't fight a war that you don't know exists. That's one. Another thing is, deliverance is not for a trained priest and only a trained priest. It's biblical that we can all do it. We can all
Yes.
self-deliver. We can all deliver other people. Our prayer is so incredibly powerful. And like, you can see it in real time, like, especially working with the deliverance ministries and actually having gone through them myself. Like, you see them in real time. And some people it's really dramatic, and some people it's like for me, I can feel it in the moment, and then I can almost doubt it. And then, like, a week later, I start getting these crazy attacks, and then it goes away, and then my life, and then I just get more spiritual. Like, I level up in these ways.
Yep.
It's hard to describe if you've never done it, but it really is like, it's a real thing, and it's not going to be like The Exorcist, where your head's spinning and then the demon comes out and all. It's not like that, but there are some pretty dramatic ones, that and accounts of that, and it's real. And so, yeah, these think about uh any kind of like these intrusive thoughts you have, and realize it's not me. And when they say these things about you, like you're not good enough or whatever it is, whatever kind of demon is messing with you, like, you can say that's a lie. That's not that's not me. And you can pray about it, you can pray it away, and you can call it out, and uh you can banish it in the name of Jesus. You can do all these things yourself. It's in the Bible. Like, they the disciples all did that. And that was one of the big things that was the difference in the people that followed Jesus, is like, that kind of deliverance never happened previous in the Bible. It was never like a thing. Like, there were miracles and there were all kinds of that, but like they were like freaked out that he could cast out demons.
That's it.
So he taught us how to do that in the Bible. It's all there. It's basically a manual for it. I mean, at least in part, it's a manual for delivering entities. So just know, if you are suffering from any kind of however intense your demonic, your demonizations, your influence, the influence on you, the oppression, the possession, whatever, or someone you know, it's real, and it's a war that's happening. And if you don't know it's happening, then you can't fight it. So the thing to do is, wake up to the fact that it is happening down to the smallest percentage. I mean, like I said, it doesn't have to be big. It can be these little voices telling you to do stupid things.
Amen.
And then once you realize that's not you, and here's another thing too. Once you start fighting, things do escalate.
Oh
So
yeah.
the other thing is life gets better when you start fighting, and that these things get less scary. I don't remember the last time I was super scared when I got like a weird
Amen.
paralysis thing, and I rarely get it because it's almost like they like have to get me when I'm weak because they
Yeah.
can't hit me all the time because I'm just too rooted,
Yeah.
you know?
Man, I love it. I love it. Patty, first of all, thank you for all of this that you've been saying, man. Um, it's like you have touched on pretty much every single thing I love. It's I you're what you're trained to do, what your experiences are. This has been such a blessing for me. I got a few questions if you have time to answer them, man.
Dude, I'm here all night, man. Let's go.
Okay. One, uh, you're a wilderness survival trainer. Dude, I've been into bushcraft and survival for 12, 15 years. Like
Awesome.
I love it so much. I used to work for a state park, and 8 hours a day, it was just me back in this holler, and I would give people admission into like this little wildlife exhibit. We had some black bears and stuff and wild boars. I'd show them to them, but most days nobody showed up. Maybe 20 minutes of my day was spent doing that, and the other 7 hours I'm hitting the hills and learning, and digging in and making traps, and it's so that wealth of knowledge that you must have in that. Like I would like to do a show on that. You know what I mean?
We can
Sometime.
talk about it sometime, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's just like that kind of stuff. That's one of my longest running passions, man. Like I
Yeah.
love the outdoors. I love survival, that self reliance.
Yeah.
I'm all about it, dude. Um, but when you started off, and you've hit on this several times, um, you say that these demons, when they were talking to you, um, and it sounded like it was just a party on the other side of the fence, you know, and you didn't even realize at the time that it was demons manipulating you and tricking you. And I had to be very careful how I go about this, but I know somebody, I'll say, um, who lately I helped through deliverance, and their story is exactly that. Um, this person would tell me, you know, they tell me how wonderful I am and how much they love me, and they're good to me most of the time. And then sometimes they tell me they can't stand me, and I'm ugly and I should do this and I should do that. But they would also let them know, like, when someone was sick, and then they would feel the afflictions of that person that was sick, and that person would get better. And so it made them feel like they were God. And that was the exact words. So when you said that they made you feel like or think that you were like the Messiah, that's exactly what this person was going through. And it's like you gave me so much understanding, because like when they were telling me this, and I'm talking like a month ago, uh, I was like, man, I don't know what I'm getting a hold of. It was my first time really. Like, it was me and my pastor, talking to him. He's never dealt with it. it was my first time leading this kind of thing, you know. Um, but you've helped me tremendously to understand. And I'm going to have to look into this Jerry Marzinsky stuff, man. These 23 patterns of activity. And I know I probably haven't asked you a single question yet, but I guess I'm just commenting back. You
Totally,
know?
man. I appreciate that. And if you ever want me to kind of introduce you guys, if you want them on the show, I can help you out with that too.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Those 23 patterns of activity, that's
Yeah.
something that stands out to me because I like notes. I like to be structured. I like to understand and
I can
study.
send you the list of the patterns that I think it's up to like 29 now, but I can send you that list
I
too,
mean,
so you can
I would
kind of
love
look
that,
at it.
dude. I
Yeah.
would love that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let me just ask just one, well, two questions. One, when did you officially give your life to the Lord?
It's hard to say like an exact moment. It was definitely a process for me. Like I said, um it wasn't a like like instant 180 for me, but there was that turning point. And um even when I decided, probably like this probably in like 2015 or 14 or
Oh
something
wow,
around that
yeah,
time, I like decided, hey, I'm gonna start going to church. I'm gonna start reading my Bible. And shortly after that, I did get baptized and stuff like that. But I was wishy-washy too, like I hadn't fully matured spiritually. It was definitely not like a like, oh, I'm Christian now, and now I don't do any of these secular things or silly habits that I grew up
yeah.
doing.
That's not how
Like
it
I still
works.
have a hard time not listening to music that's secular, because I
Yeah,
just I grew up playing music. So, and I know there's a lot of bad messaging in that, but yeah, I think I got baptized probably around, I don't remember the exact date. I have it somewhere in my email, the
yeah.
video of it, but yeah, and then really just started over the past like 3 years or so since I've been here, and really I've been like I Bible study every day
Yeah, man.
since I started reading the Bible. So I'm pretty dedicated in that. And then like the
Love it.
past 3 years have been one of these like periods of my life where I'm just full of Jesus now. Like I don't you know praying, Bible study, trying to meditate always on the word, on always
Yeah.
on God, and keep him in my life. So it's hard to say an exact point. I mean, I guess you could say my baptism, but it was a very slow trudge until, and we're all still fighting
Oh yeah, man.
the world and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
for me, yeah, I mean, I was so ensconced in the world
yeah,
that it was a slow thing for me, and it took a long time to kind of reject a lot of these worldly things in my life.
yeah,
So, but yeah, I guess, yeah, it's been probably 7 years,
yeah,
um, something like that.
yeah. You got a beautiful testimony, man. You do.
Thank you,
Uh,
thank you.
you know, I lived. I tried to get right when I was like 20, 21. It was like right before I turned 21. I hit my knees at the foot of the bed. I gave my life to the Lord. You know, I went and got baptized, and then I joined the Air Force, active duty, and
Yeah.
to the world I went. And
Hmm.
dude, I lived a very non-Christian life for about like the next 15 years, 17 years, something like that after that. And I've just been working my way back the last 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
myself, man.
Yeah.
So
I
my
I know a lot of military guys, and it's a real quick way to get into the world, man,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm from like a small town, southern West Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm going through boot camp and going through the line, getting issued boots, and they're like, "Is this your first pair of shoes?" And then like you go take the urinalysis, and they're like, "Well, you stay inside when you pee, okay? We don't have, it's not an outhouse here. Those aren't holes in the
That's
ceiling. We have lights. We have that type of stuff.
that's
Uh,
funny.
yeah,
So
I
it
got
was like almost like a shock, and then you went all in, huh?
dude. It was, and
Yeah.
I jumped in with both feet, man. I thought that
Well,
was the greatest thing.
it's so funny because, I started doing drugs and partying and stuff when I was like 12, 13. Like that's just how where I grew up is just how it is. And then I remember going to college, and I kept seeing, I'd almost like criticize or like judge people for kind of going way too crazy because they had never drank in high school. They went to college, and then that was the first time they partied or anything like that. And I'd be like, how are people so they can't even like control themselves on this stuff? And I part of my, why I got so into this stuff was my identity was I could do more quantity of drugs than anybody and still handle myself. I could
Yeah.
drive, I could talk to people. Like it was almost like a point of pride for me. And then of course, years down the line, I ended up losing it too. But yeah, I mean, some people they've never experienced it, and then they get freed into the world from under their parents' roof, and man, they just go ape.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of experiences, man, that I'm like you said, I had to go through it, and all my life, man, growing up, you talked about you had a demon story when you were a little boy. I remember when I was like 7, 8 years old, my grandmother, devout Catholic Italian lady, was watching something on like 2020 on TV, and it was like a live exorcism. And there was a woman like tied to a chair, licking and spitting at this priest. And she's watching it on TV, like, eating Cheez Its or something. And I'm freaking out, dude. Like, it scared me to death. And that stayed with me all my life. Like, I was terrified of demons until I had to face them, you know? And again, I started studying and getting into it and fleshing it out, and the Holy Spirit comes in, and it's like that's that's why they scared me when I was young, to try to stop me from being where we're at now.
Totally.
So, dude,
You know what's crazy? I was a horror movie buff. Well, I was really a movie buff in general, but I used to be really into horror movies growing up and all this stuff. And I liked all of them, but the only ones that ever scared me, and this is kind of part of that, like the seeds planted. For some reason, the only ones that ever scared me were the demonic movies.
yeah,
Those are the only ones that were scary to me. The slashers were just fun.
yep,
All these other ones were just fun. But those ones were the ones that really scared me, man. And I don't mean to change the subject, but you talked about that experience of that vision when I was a kid watching myself as a baby. So something I did forget to bring up is how you have when I remember the picture of these demons um in my head from that vision, it makes me think of I don't know if you've looked at like the like any depictions of jinn in Arabian culture and stuff
yeah,
like that, but it was almost like they have that weird spotted look to them in the drawings and stuff, and they looked a lot like that.
wow,
And something that really struck me, I have a Muslim buddy and a couple other people I know that are Muslim as well, and they never have um kind of poo-pooed the idea of demons in their religion and their culture. And I think one of the big attacks on the Christian church and the society is that they've thrown that by the wayside. They've poo-pooed it. But
yeah,
but what Islam really gets right and is that the existence of these things, and they're very they've had a lot of history with these demons, and so it's ingrained in their culture to where they will never, I don't believe they can ever let the same thing happen in their
yeah,
in their religion as in Christianity, because it's so strict, and they're
yeah,
so they keep that history. And it's not as old of a history as Christianity either, um but yeah, I mean, I remember talking to there's a Muslim gentleman, and he was telling me about a type of jinn or demon. I just think they're all evil spirits. I think
right,
evil spirit and demons interchangeable. And I have to bring up something else with you too, but um, I think that he told me that there's a type of demon or jinn that lives in vacated, isolated places, that it's known in their culture. And so
mm,
what happened here was, and I believe in this house there were multiple of them, and I don't even know if it was necessarily connected to the house, all of them, maybe just they were just assigned to attack me. But when I moved here, things started happening immediately. And so what happened was I bought this place in February of 2021, and I moved here in November of 2021. And I'm out here in the woods. I can't see any of my neighbors. I live in the boonies, And so that really hit home with me because I think something might have made its home
Oh yeah.
here in this house at the time. And also that girl I was with, she was also a little bit new agey. So she was doing some things probably that shouldn't have been doing, and maybe that was also inviting other things in as well. And yeah, and he this I think that a lot of that kind of plays into a lot of the cryptid stuff, man. Like they like these isolated, vacated places, and they make them their home. And so I think they call them jinn, and they actually differentiate between jinn and demons. I don't know how anyone could really know at
Right.
this point. It's just they're evil or they're not,
Yeah.
And they even talked about a type of jinn that occupies filth. So they like bathrooms where there's feces and
Oh wow.
urine and stuff like that. And he told me all kinds of things like how they feed on the bones of animals and stuff like that, and all these different things that they have in their lore. So I found that all to be really interesting, and so a lot of my research and stuff has brought me to make theories on things, and I kind of touched on this a little bit, but there's I've one of the big things that I have observed in my own experiences as well as hearing other people. And actually, this is something that you talked about with Tony that really hit with me. Is the hierarchy. So I noticed the hierarchy with the voices. I've talked about this already. I noticed there's almost lateral, like how there's like ranks and ratings in the military, MOSs and stuff. It's like there's ranks and there's different jobs and they have different abilities and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
truly I believe that's how they work. And I think a lot of the stuff we experience, I think a lot of the big demons are orchestra, like they talk about principalities and dominions and all these things, and I think they are overlords of uh units, and there's
Yeah.
different units of demons, and they, like I said, there's religious spirits and monitoring spirits and all these different things, and marine kingdom spirit, all these different things that people talk about. um and so you typically, like in a deliverance, and I'm sure you've seen this, you'll have a demon that says, oh, I'm Satan,
Hmm.
right? And I don't necessarily think that that's Satan himself. I think that is either an imposter demon, or I think it's a demon that is under like the house of Satan.
Yep. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like under that or like Azazel or Asmodeus, or like I had like the skunk demon. I don't think that was Asmodeus himself
Right.
or Ashma or whatever you want to call it. I think that was something working under it, because I don't think they got time for one little guy like me. I think they're orchestrating bigger things, and it even talks about how, I forget, it was what was it? Michael was fighting the Prince of Persia or whatever, and Daniel, is that what it was? I can't
Yep.
remember the exact scripture
Yep.
and stuff. So I think it's like these principalities that rule these different things, and I think they have different names. I think a lot of demons have multiple names. I think you'll sometimes hear a deliverance minister say like, "Oh, spirit of lust, or spirit of anger, or spirit of addiction, or whatever," or sometimes you'll get an actual name out of them, or sometimes it'll be something that really struck me about Tony's show when I first started watching is he was interviewing a deliverance minister, and he had a demon named Elbow Grease,
Hmm.
and elbow grease uh, wouldn't allow him to do masculine things. So he couldn't catch a ball or he couldn't turn a wrench because he had this demon, and he was able to self-deliver it, and finally was able to start doing these things. And so sometimes it's these tongue-in-cheek names that they almost use to mock you.
Yep.
Like I had Hotsy Totsy or Hell in a Handbasket or some of these other things. And so they'll take on those names gladly as long as you are have your attention on them.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly. As long as you're still
sometimes
getting that validation, that attention.
totally. Yeah. And like, so, oh, well, that's another thing. So you talk a lot about Lilith in
Yeah.
that podcast, and I've had some Lilith spirits really attack me. And I think that was what that succubus shadow woman was. And I
Yes.
and I have regularly, not so much anymore, but a lot of times when I do spiritual warfare, she'll come and attack. Try and like, give me like wet dreams and stuff like that and all these things. And it's intense. And it didn't used to I didn't before I knew about it, it was just like, oh, this is just a natural thing that guys get. And then
Right.
I started noticing like these are like intense dreams, and there's something like, I like, sorry to be graphic, but like sucking things out of me, like trying to get things out of me. And so I think recently things have escalated with this Lilith spirit, this daughter of Lilith, because I'm getting married soon. So I think because I'm getting married at the end of June, so I think as this relationship has gotten more serious, and we're doing it the right way, and we're trying to do it biblically and all that stuff, and like she's mad because I think it's like people talk about spirit wives and stuff like that, and so I may have this spirit wife, or she sees herself as my spirit wife, and she's mad and angry about it. So that when you were talking about all these Lilith, because Lilith is said to go around and taking seed from men and
Yes.
and stuff like that, right? So that really struck for me when I was listening to you and Tony talk about that the Lilith stuff, because I got some beef with her too.
Well, hey, on that note, if you're getting married and you talk about spirit spouses and stuff, Psalm 91, man.
Yeah,
They used
that
to,
was the big one for me. Yeah,
yeah, dude. They would write in these incantation bowls, verses from Psalm 91 as part of their divorce formula. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So yeah, verse 5, not afraid of the terror by night.
Yeah. That was one of the things I noted about your episode was the Psalm 91 stuff. Because you hear a lot about Psalm 91 as a spiritual warfare prayer,
Yeah.
but the way that you broke it down of like, the what was it? The night, what did they call it in it? I can't remember. The
The
night
terror by night.
demon. Terror by night. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was like, yes, that's it right there. Like
Yeah,
that's
man.
that's Lilith. That's a Lilith spirit, big time.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. And so the other thing that sometimes they do is they give you these, they might name themselves after someone in your past, or they might name just a random name. Have you heard of this dude, Understanding Conspiracy?
Understanding conspiracy.
He has this he has this
Maybe.
series called the Nephilim Look Like Clowns.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Paul Stobbs.
Yeah, Paul. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I've had Paul
yeah.
on my show. I've been on Paul's show.
Oh, no way.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
so
I
I'm a
go.
new subscriber to you, but yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. That dude's doing some really good work, and I think he's come up with some, like, his theories are like pretty bulletproof, man. Like I
Yeah,
like his theories. Like that series in and of itself is really, really good. I reached out to him a little bit, but I know he's a busy guy too. But yeah, I think the clown stuff is big. Um I think that's like a pretty big breakthrough that he's come up with, and I tend to agree with it.
yeah.
I think I'm not sure if I think he would concur with this. They weren't all like that,
Right.
but I think there's a big contingency of the Nephilim that were, that kind of clown like look. Obviously they've been caricatured in our Western uh, uh, version of them, but it's
Yeah.
almost like a worship of them the same way a lot of these tribes do and stuff. And I don't know how familiar your audience is with his stuff, but it sounds like they probably are. But
Yeah, they should
he
be.
had
They
this
should be.
guy. Yeah, they should. He's awesome. Yeah, he's really good. And I can't wait for that book to come out. But he had a guy on who was going through alcohol withdrawals. Have you heard that?
Uh-uh.
So this is like one of his first video. I don't know if it's one of the first ones, but it's early on before he got, because like he had like a 5 year hiatus off YouTube. So I his videos just popped up in my feed out of nowhere, and I
Nice.
started watching them, and I'm like, this is like gold. So I when I find someone I like, I just go to the first one they ever made, and I just watch every video. And so I'm watching through him, and he had this guy on, and this is like right when he was kind of starting to come into the come up with this theory about the Nephilim looking like clowns. He had this guy on named Larry, I think, and he was going through alcohol withdrawals, and he decided to drink a bunch of NyQuil to kind of help with the symptoms of it. And then he had like 3 days of these voices talking to him and interacting with him. Like that thing hit so close home. I recommend listening to this guy's
Yeah.
testimony. I can try and find it and send that to you also.
Yeah, man.
But it was the same kind of thing, and the guys, like the head demon's name was Chuck. Like it was just a guy's name, and they were
Yeah.
doing a lot of the same kinds of stuff, trying to make him do things and commit himself to them, and they would, there was, and this was a funny one. He had one of the guys in one of the demons in that little clique of demons in that squad, or whatever you want to call it, was like almost sing-songy. Like he'd answer him in
Mm-hmm.
like a sing-song voice, and I would get that. I had that one of those too, that was almost like singing songs to me. And I can't remember his full testimony. Like all these other guys, like they can tell their story a lot better than I can tell their story. So I recommend checking these guys out. But yeah, Larry's story. I can't remember the name of the video, but I will send it to you if you want it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, he just talks about it, and a lot of it hits home with the whole like spirit guide thing, like you talked about the person who's they were telling him, oh, you're no good, or you're Jesus, or whatever, all these
Yeah,
different things. And and then they give them these abilities, quote unquote, but really they're just able to, they don't operate in the same physical world we do, so they can go from one place to another. Now they're not omnipresent or omniscient like God is, but they have these networks, and I believe a lot of these monitoring spirits, they can like I have a friend who he's like he was a big Hollywood comedian, and now he's a podcaster and a homesteader and stuff. And he'll come up with these jokes on his stream, and then all of a sudden it's like every comedian saying his jokes.
oh man.
And one of my theories, and he's like, why are you going to steal my jokes? Why are you going to steal my jokes? Like when it's, and sometimes that it is because they wait till it's safe to say it. When he says it, when it's controversial.
Right.
But and if anyone doesn't know, I'm talking about is Owen Benjamin. He's a buddy of mine. So but sometimes it'll be like, you know the next day everyone's talking about the thing he was talking about the day before. And I think what they do is like they almost like they'll get something like a monitoring spirit will give the information to another group and then disseminate it. And that's how a lot of these things I think work with, like, COVID narratives and all these other things. I think they just disseminate stuff through networks and their different abilities and things like that. But yeah, I can't even remember where I was going because I just went off on a tangent about that. But yeah, man, the whole names thing is pretty cool, and I think Paul's onto some pretty neat stuff. Oh yeah, the spirit guide stuff. I think that's one of the ways they draw you in is these abilities.
Yeah,
And for some people it's the Messiah, but for other people they're like New Agers or something like that. And so they entice them that way, saying, I'm your spirit guy. Let me show you how to astrally project. Let me show you how to do this cool thing, and you're going to have these powers, and I can tell you where this is and what that is and what's going to happen tomorrow and all these things. I mean, that's why God tells us not to do divination, not to do any of this fortune telling
that's it.
nonsense. So it ain't because it doesn't work. It's because it
Exactly.
does work, but you're opening doors for demonic entities, and you're committing idolatry by doing it.
Amen.
And yeah, it's just I find it incredible that people can still, after knowing the like terror that people go through when they fall for these spirit guide things, they can still do it. They keep doing it. They keep going to Ouija boards. They keep going to all this black magic and witchcraft. It's like, man, it just never ends well, does it?
I know.
Um,
Never,
like
never answer.
and that dream I was telling you about, where the guy and the girl were trying to figure out how to like meet. I'm not even sure they were actually people at the time. I was like, oh man, I missed my chance to meet these people that were in my dream. I think it was a quote unquote spirit guide type demon trying to get me to invest into a lifestyle of astral projection and open another door for more demons.
Yeah, yeah. That's good discernment, man.
Yeah, hey man, I wouldn't have it if it wasn't for the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I
That's
wouldn't have
good.
been able to come up with that myself. It took me a while to figure that out. It took me like a few weeks and some chatting with a buddy of mine to really be like, whoa, that's what that was.
Thank the Lord for it.
Thank the Lord, man. Definitely.
Hey, Patty, anything else you want to go over before we hop off here for this? But I definitely want to do some more talking, man. Like, there's
Dude, yeah. I mean, I have a million things that like I forgot that I wanted to bring up, but like, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta let it end, and then we can come back for round two or whatever. I don't know, man. I'm pretty satisfied. I feel like I got my kind of the at least the basics out, right?
sweet, sweet.
Yeah.
Any kind of timeline on this book?
Man, I don't know. It's hard because I'm a business owner. I work on the ambulance. I'm getting married. I got a homestead. I'm trying to work on it, a little bit at a time. I'll have like periods where I'm just like cranking out words, and then I have periods where I'm like not, or I have periods where I'll read over what I read. I'm like, I hate this, and then I throw that away. So it may be a little while, but the tentative title for it is called Tales from My Bonfire, and I don't know what the subtitle is going to be, but or maybe that is the subtitle, and there's going to be
Sweet.
actual different title, but that's kind of my working title, Tales from My Bonfire, because it all started with a bonfire.
Amen. Awesome, man. Yeah, I got one that's been sitting on my external hard drive for 5 years, dude. Like 5 years, I wrote 80% of it, and it's just
Yeah.
sitting there. So yeah, I get
I
it.
feel like it's a mission. Like it is a mission. I feel like I have multiple books in me. I'm trying to keep it like I'm not Gary Wayne. You know what I mean? Like I can't write like 50 of these.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 50 just like 4-inch books, with all this like research information. A lot of this is going to be from my heart and from my discernment. There's going to be a little bit of research in it, but it's going to be a lot shorter. I'm hoping, 300-page book that can give someone because Gary Wayne, like you're into it. If you're buying a Gary Wayne book,
Oh,
that's your stuff. You're into these
yeah,
demon,
yeah,
like
for sure.
demonic and Nephilim stuff. For me, like I want it to just be, and I love those books, but I want it to be something that can get someone started. Like it's almost like an introduction, like, hey, you're not alone kind of book, and I'm hoping I can get it out and at least get it written this year, maybe in year or two, and get it published. And then maybe there's more books after that. I'm trying to keep it concise. Like I said, I have pages of experiences and stuff, and I don't want it to just be a tome of experiences of mine. There's going to be some, but I want every experience that I include in the book to have a purpose for the message.
Amen.
So I don't want to just be like, oh, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. I want everything to be concise, and to further the message that I want to conclude with at the end of the book. So that's there. I'm going to try and focus it on one message, and then maybe if I God willing, write another book after that, it'll be another message. So I want each one to have its own purpose and be simple. So I'm hoping a year. Things always take longer than
Yeah.
than you
Yeah.
present.
Well, hey, if you ever need a proofreader, holler at me. I've proofread a couple books for people. I
Right on.
thoroughly enjoy it. Break out the highlighter and the red pen, like getting in my
Oh,
teacher
heck yeah.
mode. So yeah, man, just
Well,
holler at me.
I'll definitely send it to you, man. I can use as much help as I can get. So
All right, brother. Well, look,
yeah.
I appreciate having you on. Um, yeah, let's shoot me an email of some of that Jerry Marzinsky, and
Yeah,
we'll line up another session, dude. Because
let's
I
do
want
it.
to talk to you so much. There's so much I want to talk about.
Awesome, man. I'm super pumped for that. Thank
I
you
am
for
too,
having me.
brother. Hey, thanks so much, man. God bless.
Yeah, God bless.
No, bye.